I recorded about 110 episodes in the span of 7 months. And over that course of time, I realized that I absolutely love doing this. Like, it feels like air in my lungs, so to speak. I've lived for this sort of thing. I love podcasting. I love talking about video games. But I felt like there was a lack of quality there. I felt like I was pushing out episodes, but not necessarily raising the bar.
Round one, fight.
And that's the bottom line.
And his kick is good.
I need a weapon.
This is over.
You cannot escape.
We forget 1,000 things every day. How about you make sure this is one of them?
Here we go.
It's time for the main event.
Player experience, the premium podcast that brings you the best in single player gaming and in video games. As always, I'm your host, Sebastian Mauldin, and don't adjust your dial. I know it's been a while, but I'm back, everybody. The podcast is back, and I have a lot of catching up to do, a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things I've been wanting to get to for quite some time. But, you know, I took a little hiatus, and we'll get to that in the show. But before I get to it, before I lay down all the rigmarole, before I get to the new age of things, I want to introduce my guest today. The guest is actually going to be running the episode, acting as the moderator and the host for most of the episode, and I'm going to be taking the role as the person who's answering all the questions. So I wanted to do this so that you can get to know me a little better and really take the direction that I want to go with the podcast in a new light. So without further ado, my guest is the wonderful, the beautiful, the absolutely amazing, cannot live without her, my wife, Giselle Maude. Giselle, how you doing today?
I am doing pretty good. Thanks for the introduction.
So you are going to be doing something that you always do in my life, and that's asking me questions, and I'm going to be in the hot seat, so proverbially speaking, and you're going to be breaking down specific questions that we kind of went over a little bit. And really, I guess this is a way for people to get to know me and the new direction of the show. So are you ready?
I am so ready.
Okay, so without further ado, let's go. I'm on the hot seat. And what is my first question for this episode?
All right. So I know you've been off for 6 months. We're all excited to see you back. So why the break?
Really, I think it was a tale of a couple of things. So I looked at the way I was going. I was putting out a whole lot of episodes, and in that first season, I'm gonna call it season 1, I recorded about 110 episodes in the span of 7 months. And over that course of time, I realized that I absolutely love doing this. Like, it feels like air in my lungs, so to speak. I've lived for this sort of thing. I love podcasting. I love talking about video games. But I felt like there was a lack of quality there. I felt like I was pushing out episodes, but not necessarily raising the bar a whole lot. And I really wanted to step back and look at how can I get better myself as a podcast, and how can I raise the quality of this show. So with all that with that mindset, I started to analyze. I'm like, okay, what are successful people doing in this space in gaming, and also, you know, just in podcasts in general? What can I learn to be better as a overall podcaster and as a host? So I hit pause, and it hurt my heart to do so, but I felt like if I would have kept going, I would have hit that point of extreme burnout without necessarily raising the quality, or I would have been pushing out content that I wouldn't have been proud with, and that would have been hard for me to actually, you know, give to others something that I'm not proud with myself. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think I can speak for everybody and to say that we're happy to see you back and seeing you back in the space that you belong. So tell us a little bit about the remake. What's different this time around?
Okay, so this time around, the single player experience, I like to call it the remake. The second season is the remake of the show. Well, in this season, in this remake, this reiteration, whatever we want to call it here, I'm going to be focusing on single player games just as usual, on recommendations, on what I think is hot, what I think is not. I'm going to be giving a ranking system in this season where I'm going to be breaking down the hottest games that you should be playing, the hottest indie games from, if you've seen ESPN, there's this segment that I really like called Steven's A-List, with Stephen A. Smith, where he breaks down at any given time a list of 5 to 6 things that he thinks are like really important in different spaces. And I want to do that same thing with video games. I want to kind of revitalize and give people like the definitive list of the indie games they should be playing, the single player games that they should be playing on the AAA side as well. I also want to really emphasize and bring people stories, like stories about single player games, about the gamers who are playing them, about the games themselves. I feel like in the last go around, I was kind of on the cusp of it, but never quite hit it to the level that I wanted to get to. And that's like, I want to really connect with people and have people listen to something they can actually connect to. I want to have people on that really talk about like why these games are really resonating with them, why video games are such an important tentpole and landmarks in their lives. Like, what is, if we're doing a specific episode about a game, what really marinates with this game, or why didn't this game really resonate with some people? You know, like, I really want to emphasize and this is something I took a break on to actually try to improve myself on, and that's the art of storytelling. I want to have every episode tell a story, and something that, for the most part, I hope connects with the listeners. So that's what I hope the remake, the single player experience remake is. I want to get better as a host and also as a storyteller.
Okay. Is there something that you're most excited about of this remake?
Yeah, I think also restarting from ground zero, but I think it's and this is not to be braggadocious here, but my wife always chastises me on my bragging habits sometimes, but like we were fortunate enough to get new gear, so new setups, new gear. I'm excited to learn how to bring that new gear, such as a new camera. I got a Sony EV10 Mark II. And, you know, I got the second angle camera right here. I got some new lighting. You're actually in closer to the setup that I'm going to be at for a lot of the shows. And, you know, I'm excited for people to see that as well. So I think there's new layers of things that I'm excited about. The new tech, the new bringing some of the new skills that I've acquired over the last 6 months to the show. And also, you know, I'm madly excited to talk about some of the games that I've been playing that I haven't gotten a real chance to talk about, you know, so I'm excited about that as well.
Well, or I think we're all excited to see how you grow. Let's get into a little bit more of the personal get to know you stuff. What is one of your favorite memories that you have as a gamer?
Oh man, so some of my personal favorite memories as a gamer, I think, like, ironically, this is a show about being a single player gamer, but like some of my favorite memories of video games just of all time have been across all types of genres, whether it be single player or multiplayer. Like, for instance, growing up, my best friend Kilton and I used to stay up all night growing up playing Super Smash Brothers, in that case Melee for the GameCube. We would also stay up and like either roll through the campaign of Halo 1, 2, and 3, or also just, you know, try to beat each other down in Blood Gulch, if you know, you know. But so I'm like, those are part of my core memories that really resonate and stay with me to this day. But then, like, as a single player gamer, some of my favorite memories are like the stories that I've just been upon and like have followed, and also like the adventures that I've gone on and that games have basically been able to give to me. Like, for instance, I think of God of War 2018, where I had been playing God of War my whole entire life, from God of War 1 for the PlayStation all the way to, you know, God of War 3 and even God of War Extension, which I didn't like very much. But it feels like we don't talk about Bruno's scenario when I talk about God of War Extension, but God of War 3 specifically felt like the culmination of a story that felt like the game that I loved in college, and the game I loved for that game that a series that I loved into that moment. And then to see it come back in 2018 with a brand new coat of paint, with like you learning about a God of War, so to speak, in Kratos, who's matured over the years and sort of grown, and now he's a father and he's trying to figure out fatherhood as well as like was in their bag by delivering like these high quality single player over the shoulder games at that time, and it just felt like a culmination of everything that I wanted in a game at that time. And it was that game's magical. That game's absolutely magical, and the story that they were telling was absolutely riveting. So I think about that, but I also think about like GTA 5 and man, just it being one of my first experiences of I'm making my own money now as an adult in 2013, and working at a beer factory and basically being able to start buying games for myself. I think of like the Arkham universe, and specifically with Arkham Asylum and then Arkham Knight, where I didn't think I'd ever play a superhero game that didn't feel like a baked in movie tie-in. I never thought I'd get that in my life. And then my favorite superhero ever, like Batman, actually came through with a game that I considered one of the best games I ever played at that time. And even now, I think Arkham Knight is still probably in my top 10 favorite games of all time. And it was just seeing something that I only seen in the big screen, that I read as a comic, and that I read in comics growing up. Because like that was how I learned how to read, was comic books. To see that character come to life in a video game that wasn't trash, that wasn't poo cheese, was magical. So I'm like, those are some of my favorite moments, in video games.
I love that. Well, with that said, now you talked about your favorite memories, kind of starting off with your best friend and like that kind of relationship. So, what led you to single player games? Is that where you started off, aside from the games you played with Kel?
Nah, give me a second, everybody. So, because like I want to explain. We're also shooting in two different parts of our house right now. So I'm in like our upstairs, and she's in like the studio like office setup that we have. And Biscuit, our dog, we have a 3-year-old Labrador, about to be 4. He's actually downstairs with her. So if you do hear the panting, it's him wanting some love and attention right now. He wants to be the star of the show. Right now she's throwing a ball back and forth with him, and if he's not like tired out like earlier throughout the day, he's gonna want attention. So if you do hear that, if you do hear panting, that's where the sound's coming from. But to pivot back and answer your question, it's like I really just hit hard into single player experiences, like games and such, like right around that college time. And when I moved from my small town in East Texas to my college town in Nacogdoches. Shout out to the SFA Lumberjacks here in Texas. But like while I was there, trying to make new friends, trying to get into a new environment and such like that. And like I would jump onto some multiplayer games, and they'd be fun. I'd play the Halos of the world. I'd also, around that time in college, I owned a 360 and a PS3. So I'd be playing some multiplayer games, but then I'd still be playing games like Uncharted and Uncharted, some Gears of War by myself, or in the Mass Effect series was a game trilogy that I fell in love with. And those are like games that sort of helped me really key into like still be a part of that video game culture that I love so much, but also like I got to experience some really riveting stories while also trying to adjust to a new way of my life. I guess, like college is that weird adjustment period, especially when you're starting out, where you're trying to make new friends, trying to see what your life is going to be like, trying to get used to a new environment if you move to a new place. So it was like, that was when the bridge started happening of me like really started to like hardcore be a single player gamer of that. And then like later on in life, I think like we've all been there of like we have this core group of friends that we play with, and then life happens. We like you love them to death, but they're doing their own things in life. Like I mentioned Kelton, shout out to him though, one of my best friends for life. Like he got married, he had kids. He was in the military for a bit, and that was my dog, everybody. But he was in the military for a spell, and like we weren't able to do like the in-person gaming sessions anymore at that point. Like some of the people that I met along the journey, like I had a friend named Kevin who I play a lot of the sports games with. We we went to separate colleges in two separate states, so I wasn't able to kind of like be on the game with him. So like it was oftentimes I would have to put myself out there and start like building my own community, or I think I went to the more extreme route of, as I got older, starting to hermit a little bit, because outside of like doing this podcast and everything like that, when I'm out with you and our group of friends and like people like that, I'm very social. But when I'm in this house, I'm a damn hermit. Like I actually don't want to actually like be. I want to be in my bubble. I want to, read a book, watch anime. I want to play games, and I really don't want to be bothered with the online culture at that point. So I'm like that's why single player games in this day and age, from my 30s on to I'm 33 years old now, really like hit hard for me, because I'm like I got my sense of community through podcasting and also like hanging out with you and with my wife and also with other people around me. So I'm like I don't necessarily feel that urge for that sense of community there. So in gaming, it feels like my quiet one-on-one time. It feels like my book club time, where I'm sitting down and really digesting a story, or really getting into the zone of like some intricate gameplay, or diving deep into an art style that just has me riveted, So I think that's why, like, over time and like that sense of like my evolving community around me really like changed the way I actually started playing games.
Awesome. Well, with that said, for context, y'all, I am the introvert in this family, and you would be surprised by how often I'm the one who's having to force him out of this house. And then he gets out of the house and he's like the most social, like everybody on the streets always wants to talk to him. Like he is that person while I just sit back and just watch everybody. So he's kind of like that kind of a paradox where he's just like, you have to pry him out of the house, but once he's out, he's like, has to talk to every single human about every single little thing all the time. So, but yeah, so if you ever see him out and about, definitely talk to him. It's going to be a rare occasion. But with that said, what is a guilty pleasure game? Out of curiosity.
I have several different guilty pleasure games. I think like if I'm being real, I have a guilty pleasure genre, and that's a sports genre. Because like outside of I'm a huge film buff. I also love anime. I also love like reading some books here and there. I also really love diving deep into gaming. But I think like when I think of my guilty pleasure games, it's the games I can just jump on with and get lost into, and they're almost like that popcorn flick movie that you're watching on television. Like the Netflix, anything on Netflix to me is popcorn flick. I think HBO Max is killing them on content, but like a real talk though, going back to the conversation, like or the topic at hand, sports games in general are my genre that I play, and they're my guilty pleasure games. I know that I'm not progressing a real story playing a sports game, but like for some reason I love making franchises in sports games. If Madden, I'm picking the worst trash ass team that I could find, and then trying to build that trash ass team up into Super Bowl contenders, and then later on actual like a dynasty. So in Madden, for all my life, I've chose the worst team. Most of that has been the Jacksonville Jaguars, because they've just been trash my whole life. They're trying to turn it around there. Shout out to Tony Khan and all them, but like it is, and the Khan family, but like that team has been trash my whole ass life. So I'm always picking them in Madden and trying to change that franchise around slowly but surely. And NBA 2K, it's like that's another of the sports franchises that I play quite often. Hate how much I play NBA 2K, because that is a game series I can just jump on at any given time and just lose hours of myself to, when I could be playing something really more, story focused, really more like intricate. I have like with their art styles, with their way of like introducing new game mechanics. I could be playing some indies, but like for some reason, my crack in life has always been NBA 2K. Like I can always that's always on every single console that I own. I have a PS 5 behind me. I have an Xbox Series X and right there behind me as well. Downstairs, I have the Xbox Series S, but right behind my TV. All three of them have some variation of NBA 2K on them. Like they're just always on them. So I'm like, it doesn't matter what I'm playing. I always can just jump on quickly and just hop on a game. With NBA 2K, I do the same thing as I do with Madden. I pick a trash ass team and I try to build them up into the playing spot, into the playoff spot, and later on I try to make them into champions and then a dynasty. It's a little harder. I like to make it harder than it has to be because I like, I get really in the weeds of like making really cool trades for my team. Also, like I like redrafting draft classes that have existed, and I like playing that exercise out. But in basketball, I like to bring back the Seattle Supersonics and really try to see if I could like bring back a team from my childhood that I grew up with that I wish came back into this NBA. And when they do the expansion, that's who I'm rooting for. I want a team in Las Vegas and a team in Seattle, but like those are two teams that I really want to see in the NBA. But like I choose the Supersonics to always revitalize and try to bring them back into prosperity, and I lose hours to do that. And then one last game, and I know I'm rambling, and I want to give you a chance to answer or do follow up questions, but like one last game that I have about 1,300 hours into is Civilization, specifically Civilization 6. That is a game that I can just play endlessly. Like I'll choose a random country and I'll try to see if I can make that country into a powerhouse. I guess there's something about like the underdog story that really just appeals to me now that I'm just saying this out loud. Because like on Civilization, I'll do that same thing. We go from rags to riches, trying to build my country up, and then if like I'll pick a random country, and sometimes it'll be like Russia or France or like US, and then I start off trying to be diplomatic, but then like at any given point in Civilization, like for some odd reason, like they'll denounce you, and then they'll like try to start a war with you, and then when they start a war with me, anybody can get it. And these hands are ready to eat for everybody, so anybody can get it in Civilization at that point. But anyways, those are like my guilty pleasure games. The Maddens of the world, 2Ks, the MLB, the show. I'll also jump on, and then a Fight Night is another one that the boxing franchise has long been dead that I wish would come back. But I have those, and I love the Fight Night series. Like boxing is not necessarily a sport that I watch a whole lot of, but I love playing those games. I'm more of a UFC person when it comes to watching like actual combat sports. All right,
Do you think like with the NBA 2K and like Civilization, I know you said it's kind of your guilty pleasure because there's not really a story, but it sounds like in your own way you force a story. Both of them.
Very much so, very much so. I think that's a good point. That story is the story that's in my head. That's the imagination. Like it's like Michael Jordan in his documentary said that like he would make up gripes or make up like different chips on his shoulder to where he'd make up like a reason to actually have that vitriol and to get up and play. I do that a lot with NBA 2K and Civilization. Like I make that story in my head of like, oh, like I'm playing as the US and France just announced me. Oh, they want beef. They got beef. I was just minding my own business. Like I was settling in my own town. For instance, this happened the other day. Settling in my own town. Right? It was my sixth city, and like our cities are about like maybe 500 square miles away from each other at this point. But for some odd reason, they got mad that I had settled too close to their city. And I had a choice. I can basically, say, hey, I'm sorry. In the future, I'll settle my cities elsewhere. Or they give you a choice of like saying, nah, I'll settle my cities anywhere I please, dog. And you know me, these hands are ready to eat for everybody. I told them I settle my city anywhere I please. It's just like that movie Life when Eddie Murphy said when they were saying, "Are you gonna eat my corn? Are you gonna eat your cornbread?" And he was just like, "No, hell no, Ray. You gonna eat your damn cornbread? If it was me, I wouldn't let him take my damn cornbread." And that's why I told France, I'm like, I settle my cities anywhere I please. You ain't getting my damn cornbread. So, yeah, it's.
And for the people, what do you name these cities?
Oh, I named these cities like after fictional actual towns, like fictional actual cities. So Like so let's say I'm playing as the United States. I let them keep the capital of Washington there, like, because I know that's my capital. But for every other city, that name is getting changed. Like I usually have a Gotham City, a Metropolis, a Central City, because that's what I'm used to. That I love those cities in the DC lore of things. I usually keep New York City because that's also a Marvel staple as well. But then I also have I try to name them after really pop culture cities that I really vibe to. I have a King's Landing from Game of Thrones. I usually keep London because of the Harry Potter references there. I also have a Hogwarts. I have different cities just based off of those pop culture references. So that's usually why I like to do in Civilization.
Well, you mentioned a couple of the gaming systems that we have, which is like one of almost everything. But which one do you prefer to play on?
This is an interesting question because I want to ask you, which one do you see me play on the most? Because I want to get your thoughts. Do you see me play on one more than others?
Yeah, I feel like when we first got married, so like when we first moved into this house, you played the PS5 the most. And then what I think is kind of funny is around that time we also got our dog Biscuit, and they weren't the best of friends to start off with. Let's just say that. And then now I see you playing the Xbox more so that you're spending more time with Biscuit while you're playing.
So I think we need to elaborate here, some context for the people. So my wife and I got married in 2020. We bought our house in 2020. We got a dog, a Labradoodle named Biscuit in 2020. And when we got him, we rescued him, by the way. And he was, what was that, about 7 to 8 weeks, right?
Yeah, I think it was actually like 6 weeks. He was
Okay, so he was 6 weeks. About I have small hands, and he was about the size of my fist when we picked him up. Yeah, I'm like, he could fit in the grooves of between the door and the seat. He was that small. He felt like a Nick and Mole rat at that time. But so I had never owned a dog before. Never had a dog that was this is my dog. I have to take care of it fully. I've never had that experience in my life. So I was tentative about this whole thing. And my wife really wanted one, and they say when you get married, there's this thing called happy wife, happy life. So I wanted to test that out really quick. So we ended up rescuing Biscuit, and when we first got into this house, we were kind of I made this upstairs my game room area. So we had it was our game room and movie room, and we have a projector up here. We have these couches. I put this 75-inch TV. There's a projector screen that pulls down, that comes down behind me and such that. And you and I would watch movies up here. I'd spend a lot of time up here gaming and such like that. And when we got Biscuit, I was worried that I had seen all these stories on the internet about my dog chewing up, or a dog chewing up gaming stuff, wires, controllers, all that kind of stuff. So while he was still getting trained and all that, I was so scared of him being upstairs. So I went out when Xbox dropped the Series S and Series X. I started off with the Series X. And then when we got Biscuit, and I had the hankering of I want to play video games, especially during the pandemic, where I was just my wife was still going back to the office, and I was still working from home at that time. I want to play games, but Biscuit didn't go upstairs. We've trained him not to go upstairs. So I'm okay, I got to find a solution here. And instead of bringing the Xbox downstairs like a sensible person, or the PS5, I was just nah, man, I went out, I traded my Xbox One to GameStop. And I think miraculously they gave me I think close to $100 or something. And then I think the Series S, I think I found a used one for about $175 or $185 or something like that. So I paid the $85 difference. And I put that Series S behind our TV downstairs, and you know, that's just out of habit. I'm like, I've just been mowing games down there because like Biscuit still doesn't really come upstairs very much. So I'm like, it just became that thing of like, me and Biscuit did get to be a lot closer over the years. I want to elaborate with them. I want to say that, but like originally, yeah, I was very
They are now
hesitant
pretty
that-
much best friends.
Well,
No, but honestly, like it wasn't really that hard to train him not to go upstairs
Mhm.
because homeboy was scared of heights for like the first year and a half of his life. So anytime he'd start going upstairs, his little legs would start shaking and he'd get really nervous. So it was probably not until like the last 6-ish months that he kind of decided was okay with going all the way up the stairs, but for the most part, he'd probably go like 6 stairs up and then he'd stop and he'd just come right back down because he was like, nah, it's not worth it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. He did have that fear of heights. For some reason, he just got over it. I don't know what just happened, but he just got over that. And, you know, ever since then, it's like the habit's still been there because the Xbox is down there. Like, whenever I want to hop on a quick session, I'll either pick up the Steam Deck or pick up the Xbox controller that's downstairs and basically I'll play like something down there, whether it's something down there. The Series S, I know a lot of people give it slack, but like, or flack, I should say, but like, I think for the most part, it gets the job done. I think the games look and run better on that Series X upstairs, but then like when I'm just playing casual games like NBA 2K or Madden or even games that I don't think looks super pretty, like Elden Ring and such like that, I'm like, I think the Series X does a perfectly good job, especially with my Game Pass games. That's my Game Pass system down there. So, yeah, I think like it flipped. You know, like between PlayStation, like PlayStation to me still, especially with the PS5, puts out my favorite games. I love their style of games that they come out with, the over the shoulder, that adventures that they take you on. I feel like they're the premium. They have a premium catalog that I really resonate with. But then like Xbox feels like Netflix and feels like a streaming service with Game Pass. So I'm like, for a lot of that, I can just pick up and play a slew of games down there that, you know, like that resonate with me just as much in a different way. And I like that. It's like over the years, I've kind of like flip-flopped back and forth. I think I've always leaned closer to PlayStation's library of games, but Xbox Game Pass has given me a lot of entry points to a lot of games that I wouldn't have played otherwise. So yeah, I think it's interesting. Like between Xbox and PlayStation, I've definitely over the years, especially over the last 2 years, become more of an Xbox gamer. But then like I historically was never a PC gamer before, and that Steam Deck is starting to change that a little bit too.
Yeah, I think that's interesting actually, because like from hearing you talk, it sounds like you're more of a PS5 person, but whenever it gets slower in like gaming or some like those kind of things, you kind of switch to the Xbox to kind of fill in your time because there isn't those big games that PS5 is kind of known for, or like PlayStation. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
I think you're spot on the money there. I think like for the big first party games that PlayStation puts out, the God of Wars, the Spider-Mans, the Last of Us, the Horizons, all those games, I would probably consider in my personal like higher tier. They feel, and this is something I think they've done magically. They've made those games feel like gaming moments. They, you know, like whether or not you like the franchises or you don't, everyone's preferences are different. But like PlayStation has done a really good job of making their catalog feel like very similar to the way the HBO Max and HBO makes their library of shows feel very much like a step up above the Netflix shows. You know, like, you know, when me and you were watching The Last of Us, The Last of Us felt like an event. Like, they also have a really good show called Hacks, which like it's written in a way that makes it feel like a higher quality show than just your typical Netflix show. I think another good example is like Game of Thrones with the original series and House of the Dragon. They feel like main event shows. They feel like they're in that A tier or S tier level shows where everyone stops what they're doing and they're like, oh, we put some, even if they don't watch it, they put respect on that name. And like PlayStation has done that with their catalog of games. And you're absolutely right. Like those to me feel like tentpole moments. They feel like the big games of the year when they do drop one of their first party when they're first party exclusives. Xbox on the other hand, like this isn't going to be the most controversial statement. Their exclusives have been lacking for so long, like their first party catalog, and it's because they release so many niche games, they're going to have an audience. It's just they don't have that massive appeal there as far as like Joe Smo on our street isn't going to probably resonate with like a lot of the Xbox games. He might pick one and it might be his hardcore Xbox game, his hardcore game that he might pick up. But like PlayStation has these big moments, and Xbox Game Pass, I think, has done a good job of like, I guess you could say, altering video game habits for me to where like, whereas like any game that for the big moments, I'm playing on my PlayStation, but for everything else, it's like Xbox feels like my regular everyday video game console. It feels like the video game console I'm going to play the most on and play every game that's not a PlayStation exclusive on. It's weird because like I play the most on Xbox, but then I think because of the way Game Pass is, it's like I feel like, and because they haven't came out the gate swinging with first party exclusives that I feel like most people are enthusiastic about yet. So hopefully they'll change that around. But like because of that, they feel like the everyday console, but not the special one. They don't feel like the premium event, but they feel like something that they feel like Netflix. They feel like comfort food.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I have one last question.
I think this is a good comparison. Like, so you and I, we like to, for our special occasions, we like to go to, eat steak dinners and such like that. PlayStation feels like those steak dinners, but you like, my parents were visiting us, for my birthday, and, we cooked, we had like, they came in, they brought like, we bought all these groceries and we were cooking meals left and right. It was like a good slew of like home cooked meals. And that's great. That is really good. But like after they left, the first thing I told you is I want some junk food. Like I want to go out and get fast food. I want some Whataburger, man. And that's what Netflix
This man
kind of
didn't
feels like.
appreciate the good.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm like, that's what Netflix feels like. And further, to bring this back to gaming, that's what Xbox feels like. It feels like I want that. It feels like the junk food, that comfort food. It feels like fast food versus culinary food. And I think like there's a lot of people out there that prefer regular old Chili's, Applebee's, Chili's, Applebee's, like fast food as well. Like though they prefer those smaller the chain restaurants and fast food. And I think Xbox has done a great job of delivering that. I feel like where they're trying to succeed now is like actually delivering those high culinary, the bear stat type of style, like culinary masterpieces. Whereas PlayStation, I feel like has those and also has the junk food, but doesn't have a catalog like Game Pass that really just makes it easier for you to appreciate that junk food.
That makes sense. Well, my last question is what makes single player games special to you?
We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but like what really makes single player games special, I think, is the stories, the way that they're able to deliver stories in a similar way or at least that way that invokes similar emotions to movies and comic books and books in general. It's like single player games, playing those feels like you're the star of those books, the star of those comic books, the star of those movies. It feels like you're playing an adventure that was curated from the ground up for you to just go on, and for the most part invokes emotions, whether it invokes like joy with the gameplay, whether it invokes like heartbreak or like triumph with like its narrative and adventure, whether it invokes nostalgia or whether it invokes like a sense of dread because it's a horror game or like something bad has happened. Single player games, in a way that multiplayer games just don't hit the same with, invoke feelings of emotion in a wider way of like of emotions there. I think like when I play a single player game, I'm playing it because I want to be taken on that journey. When I'm playing a multiplayer game, which is rare nowadays, but then when I'm playing that, I'm playing that because I want to be a part of a community. I think that's the difference there. It's like the difference between wanting to be a part of a community or wanting to like just achieve a community-based objective versus you really wanting to just dive into something that's been curated from the ground up to really just take you on a specific and specified journey. I think that's what makes single player games special. Like giving you some examples would be Red Dead Redemption. One of my favorite games of all time, follows a guy who straddles the line between doing good things and bad things in a world where you're playing in a olden style western, and this guy is trying to do right by his family, but then like he has temptations as well. Like you're also going on several different adventures that straddle one side of the law versus the other, and you're human, you're really just trying to live life in this westernized world there. And I think like the fact that in Red Dead you're able to be transported to a world that's not our own, but is like curated from the ground up to invoke so many emotions, and then also like tell a rich story there. And I think that's special. That's something you don't see in any other mediums. To get to experience it firsthand yourself, I think that's entirely special.
I love that. Well, those are really all of the questions that I have for you, but it is always so like good as your wife and as like a listener of your podcast, just to like share you with the world and kind of share like who you are as a person to everybody. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for doing this. Everyone, I sort of, I bribed her with treats and yogurt and such like that. She loves frozen yogurt to do the show with me. She was very much sweet enough to accept it. The panting you hear is Biscuit again. He always wants to be a part of everything we do. So, yeah, I wanted to say sorry for the absence though. Like, I know it's been a while. I know it's been a long break, and I wanted to level up and really give you something special this time around, something that really resonates. I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to also let you get to know me a little better as a host and as a person. And yeah, it's been a journey to get here, but I'm glad I'm back. So thank y'all so much for listening to this episode. The links in the description. I want to really emphasize those. One is to the single player experience Discord. Another is going to be to ask me different questions to be able to write in with different topics for the show, write in for different things, whether or not it be like rebuttals for topics that I'm going on or anything like that. If you don't agree with the rankings that I have and such like that, put those in the description below. Let me know your thoughts on the show. Thank y'all so much again for listening. Stay tuned for the Wild Ride. We got so many guests coming at you in the weeks to come. Thank y'all so much. In the meanwhile, stay safe, stay gaming, and enjoy that single player experience. Peace out, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, it's your boy Sebastian. Do your boy a favor and hit that like button. Also, to stay tuned with everything we got going on, including upcoming videos and episodes, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there. Anyways, thank y'all so much for listening. Until next time, stay safe, stay gaming, and enjoy that single player experience. Bye, everybody.